All right, so Heather?
I know. So
we
my
have a
good
very
friend,
special-
the state senator, is going to join us next.
A lot of people think
Yes.
Cape Ann today is Heather Atwood and Senator Bruce Tarr. It's really not. It's whatever.
Well, we couldn't. We're going to miss our interview this afternoon.
Yeah.
So I said, well, come
How
on
are
down
ya?
to Harriet
Good
Webster
to see
Pier.
you.
You know, Corey, it's nice to see you.
I know, it's been a while.
I've been wondering about you for a while. I have to tune in to see you.
This
Right?
is true, yeah. I have to do the same.
It's glad to connect, and aren't we lucky to connect on a beautiful day on this wonderful
man,
pier?
this is unbelievable.
My
Yeah,
goodness.
right? This
Yeah.
is better than Zoom, isn't it?
It is better
Yeah.
than Zoom.
See
There's
you.
no doubt about it. Although, Heather, I tried to find a picture frame so I could hold it up so I'd feel comfortable.
I
accustomed
should,
to
Yeah.
I should be looking through my phone. Right.
It's a big weekend here, but what are you looking forward to most?
You know, people have asked that question over the last several days, and of course I enjoy the entire thing because it reconnects us with our heritage, but it also reminds us of the future and the stewardship we have of the legacy of people who have earned a living at sea and depended on the marine environment, and the stewardship, the obligation we have going forward of taking care of the ocean and making sure that we do the right thing by these incredible natural resources that we're blessed to have. But I have to say, of all the things, the thing that's most stirring to me is that parade of sail on Sunday morning when you can look out and you can see tall masts in Gloucester Harbor, and you can think back to the days when that was happening routinely, and brave men and women were engaged in the fishing trade and moving things by boat. They were risking their lives, but there was a beauty in their character, in their grittiness, in their determination to be survivors. And that's what our city has always been about. And so for me, that is the most poignant time of the entire thing.
Yeah, it's a really special event, and I've always said this to me, and I love Fiesta Weekend. There's just something about the Schooner Festival. It's just so eye-popping.
Well, and I think you nailed it, because I had the exact same experience of thinking, oh my gosh, this is what it looked like.
Yeah.
This is what Gloucester Harbor was like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And it is, we don't get to see that often. It's
Yeah.
just
So-
once a year.
I've often said that when we hear the wind in the sails, then our predecessors are speaking to us.
Oh,
And they're telling us take care of our legacy.
yeah.
And that's
right.
what this is all about. And it's
Right.
wonderful because it's not only great for all of us to be reminded of our heritage, but people come from all over to be able to see that and learn about it. And when we tell that message, then we make more stewards of the marine environment. So it's a really great experience all the way around. And certainly one of the events that on the Gloucester calendar has been growing steadily since it was created.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot happening.
Right.
What do you want to talk about, Heather?
Well, we have to do a little bit of business, Senator. so let's.
Well, usually in your business, that means let's run a commercial. So let's get
Chris, you should see the research she puts into your interviews each week.
It's not true. Well,
You
it
love
is
the-
true.
you
I
love the
am
news.
always
I do.
impressed at how attuned Heather is to what's happening at the State House.
Can I put a little plug in here for State House News Service? Because they do
Absolutely.
a really good job. Sam Doran, yeah, he gives me everything I need to know.
I will
Yeah.
tell Sam that you said hello.
Yeah, tell him from Scooter Fest.
I
He got that
absolutely-
mentioned, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Of course, then he'll want to come to Schooner Fest, which would be a great
Right.
thing.
We should get him here.
I
Yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah, and then he should start talking it up on Beacon Hill. Anyway, so you were coming off the informal sessions, ready
Right.
to start the season, right?
So we are going to resume formal sessions in September. It's not clear yet which day we'll have our first formal session, but we're also wrestling with how those sessions are going to be conducted. We had hoped that maybe by mid-September we'd be in a hybrid model where we could have more people back to the State House, obviously wearing masks and with a vaccination requirement. Now we're thinking through that to see if it's going to be possible. We're very eager to get back to some physical presence in the State House, but it may get pushed off for a little bit at this point. Now, as we've talked about, I'm pretty much there every day, but that's unique. I'm there because I'm the minority leader. I need to be there. I need to work with my counterparts in leadership. But for the vast majority of members, they really don't come to the State House, and that's necessary to protect the public health in the building
Right.
and to protect each other.
So, and last we spoke, there was discussion of a vaccine mandate for the legislature.
So the Senate has moved forward with that, and it's a vaccine mandate that does have exceptions. There's a religious exception, a medical exception, and if folks have extenuating circumstances, the Human Resources Department has been charged with making accommodation for them. For instance, right now, many of the staff, if not, well, almost all of the staff, are working remotely. And so if they're not vaccinated, then they're not coming into the building. So we're trying to work through that. But, you know, one thing, Heather, that I think is important to emphasize is that we are still in uncharted territory. And so we're trying to do the best we can to make accommodation, not to be overly burdensome, not to be overly restrictive, but to navigate this, to use a nautical term, as best we can. And nothing is perfect, and it's not going to be perfect, but what we are going to do is maintain our commitment to keeping state government going, being responsive to the people we represent, and making sure that we try to protect public health as best as we can.
So on that note, what are your legislative priorities this fall?
Well, I think right now, clearly the biggest one is how to spend a lot of federal money, and we've talked about that in the past when we've got about $5 billion of money that we need to figure out a spending plan for. The governor has made some proposals about how to do that. My thoughts are we ought to be working heavily on infrastructure and trying to look at some one-time expenses. For instance, Gloucester is in need at some point of a wastewater treatment plant. That's going to be very costly. I think it would be a prime candidate for that kind of federal spending. And we also, rightly, I believe, are putting some of that money away. So, and we've talked about this, some of the dollars that we have in surplus are going into a trust account for the Student Opportunity Act to make sure that we can continue to pay for improving education in our K through 12 public schools. Some of the money is being put away for our pension fund to make sure that we can meet our obligations. So those things make sense, but I think we have an extraordinary, you might call it a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, to be able to invest in the infrastructure around us to be able to make things better and to be able to improve our quality of life. And by the way, this pier that we're on is an example of that. A number of years ago, we were able to put some state money into this pier, and if you look around, you can see what's happening because of that modest investment in terms of our economy and in terms of our quality of life. I think we need to do more things like that. Roads and bridges, there's a huge demand for public buildings. So as you know, we have a fund for libraries and we have a fund for schools. Despite what many folks think, there is no fund for police and fire stations. There is no fund for other municipal buildings. And so that's something that I'm starting to look at. And in addition to that, and again, we've talked about this in the past. Sorry, Corey.
No, it's fine. I'm learning.
If you came to
I'm learning.
our interviews, you would know these
This
things.
is exactly like the usual experience when the two of you.
So one of the other things that's been hard for our small businesses is the gap that was in our unemployment insurance trust fund. And they are having to shoulder that on their own. We were able to extend a payment plan for about 20 years, which is the equivalent of giving them a 20-year mortgage to pay for something that they didn't cause.
Right.
You know, they were shut down by the public health need and by state and federal regulation. And so I would like to see us put some of those dollars as well into the fund to be able to relieve a little bit of the burden. We won't be able to relieve all of it, but I think it's a worthy cause to say, we're going to make it a little bit easier for you to continue to survive and stay open, because ultimately that's the goal.
And the governor was interested in using, well, not the American Rescue Plan funds, but the some of the extra revenue that came in from tax revenue, right?
Yes.
To replenish that fund.
And he's talked about using some of the American Rescue Plan Act funds as well, and I've proposed that several times, and I'm going to continue to be persistent to see if we can get some of that investment to be made. But it's a good segue, Heather, because we are seeing really the amounts of revenue we didn't expect in terms of state revenue, and so we're projecting that we're going to have a substantial surplus at the end of this year. But we don't want to count those chickens before they hatch, but it's looking like we're moving in a very positive direction.
Well, we could count them in July, and they were really good in July, right?
They were. So
those eggs.
we finished the last fiscal year, which ended July 1st, with over $1 billion in surplus. We think it could be close to $1.5 billion in surplus. And the good news there, not to be too technical, but the stabilization fund, which is the so-called rainy day fund that has gotten us through this pandemic, we thought was going to be below $1 billion to balance the fiscal year 2022 budget. But because of the robust economic activity and income that we're seeing, particularly from capital gains, we now think that that fund is going to be close to $6 billion with a B
That's double what
in
it was when
dollars.
we started with COVID,
Exactly.
right? That's
exactly.
amazing. Yeah.
So it's been an amazing turnaround. Again, we watch it every day because there are a lot of things that can happen, and we live in a very dynamic world. But right now, we're moving in a very positive direction.
Well, I know that you speak to the governor often. What's his mood these days? What is he terrified, and particularly as he's watching governors around the country deal with a variety of problems? What do you think is going on with him?
If there was a distinguishing characteristic that I would cite about our governor, it's his level-headedness and his calm nature and his reasoned approach to everything. And I would say that continues to be his mode and his way of operating. He's looking at all of the threats that we have from the variants that we see, not only the Delta but others, and trying to figure out which is the right way to go. But one thing that's very unusual, and it nearly never happens with Governor Baker, is sort of a knee-jerk reaction. When he produces a plan, it's usually well-reasoned. Again, we're all navigating, so sometimes it changes, but he's very level-headed, very calm, and those are traits that are important in this kind of an era.
Right.
We're almost out of time, Senator Tarr, but I did want to ask you if you're looking forward to the local elections this year. It's going to be pretty out of control. It's going to be pretty interesting.
We're going to have spirited elections,
yeah.
And I think that certainly speaks to the interest that people have in civic engagement. We always worry about the fact that folks will not want to get engaged, particularly because nationally we've had a very divisive environment that for many people repels them from getting engaged in the public debate and public service, but we don't have that problem here. And so we're certainly going to see, I think, some very spirited elections and some good debate about the future of this community, which has so much going for it, but also has so many challenges in terms of aged infrastructure and other kinds of things that we just can't afford to take our eye off of.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So the church bells are ringing, the angels pulling into port.
We're in the throes of
Cue
Schooner
the
Fest here,
sunset.
baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we thank you so much for your time. Again, it was good to be part of.
Right, you were finally with us.
Yeah, I was actually in on one of these.
It's great to have you be part of it,
Yeah.
Corey. You're always invited.
I know.
just want you to
Always
This is
invited.
true.
Yeah.
We get you your own subscription to State Out News Service.
Yeah, exactly.
You can be
Do that.
watching it.
Well, enjoy the weekend, Bruce. It's always good chatting with you.
Same here.
And continued success with the state legislature. Hopefully we don't backslide. It's just progress.
Well, let's hope. We're going to continue to keep our eye on that. But thanks to both of you, because whether or not we can move around or we can't, you always keep us connected. You always bring into our homes the things that are happening in our own neighborhoods, and that's a really important thing. So thank you both.
Oh, that means a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Enjoy the weekend,
Thank
Bruce.
you for coming down
Yeah.
here.
My
It's
pleasure.
great to see you in real life.
Great to see you as well. Thank you.
This episode of Cape Ann Today is brought to you by Bank Gloucester. Start here, get there.